A little while ago, I ended up making a video called What If the DCEU was Structured Like the MCU, and pretty much in that video I went over my version of the DCEU and a much better version of it. It was a lot more well structured like the MCU, also adding a couple new movies that doesn't exist in real life, along with some real life movies, just making a few changes here and there. And it actually did pretty good though. It's one of my most popular videos on my channel, so that ended up getting me thinking, what could the MCU have looked like if it was structured like the DCEU? What if instead of structuring it was nice, well paced and stuff, it was messy like the DCEU structure? So because that's what we're going to be going through this video, going over movies that have already been out, alongside movies that we do know is coming out and what they're probably going to be. Also, something I want to mention, I know DC's in the middle of creating their 10-year plan thing, but as of right now, considering the fact they haven't announced it, well, I'm just going to go off by what we know at the moment. Alongside this, I'm also going to say something as well. No cancel movies are allowed here, so I'm not going to go over any of the cancel ones, specifically the recent Batgirl movie. Alongside stuff like Green Lantern, Cyborg, the Batman, stuff like that. But without further ado, let's go ahead and see what the MCU could have been like if it was structured just like the DCEU's currently messy structure. So the first movie in this version of the MCU would actually be a Spider-Man movie, and if you're probably confused what's going on, considering the fact the DCEU has all the rights to their characters, I'm going to be explaining the same thing here, to where the MCU in this version has the rights to all the characters, and they can include whoever they want. So because as the first movie starting this out will go ahead and be Spider-Man, considering the fact that DC did start out with arguably their biggest name aside from Batman being Superman, starting out with the DCEU, so we're going to go ahead and say that in this version of the MCU, they started out with their biggest name, Spider-Man. Now, this movie could be go ahead and call it Spider-Man, or they can do something like they did with Man and Steel and call it the Wall Crawler. And this movie will go ahead and be directed by Josh Whedon. Now, the reason I chose Josh Whedon in this version is because I thought it'd be a cool parallel to where, rather than Zack Snyder directing this version of it, I decided to go with Josh Whedon because Josh Whedon ended up doing stuff like the Avengers in the MCU with the well-structured universe, but since we're switching things up, I feel like it'd be a bit cool if we actually swap things around and make it to where he's controlling the more messier version of the MCU, while Zack Snyder ended up making the much better version of the DCEU and my version of the DCEU video. So because of this, the main villain of this movie will go ahead and probably, I'm going to say, Green Goblin, with Gwen Stacy being the main love interest. However, Goblin doesn't kill Gwen Stacy. Alongside this, we're also going to have Peter Parker, played by Brendan Fraser. Alongside this, we will actually end up seeing Uncle Ben die in a tornado rather than a gunshot. And pretty much during the final battle of the movie, Peter will pretty much be going ahead fighting Goblin, and the entire city is going to get destroyed, essentially similar to Man of Steel. Now, the collateral damage might not be as bad, but overall, the majority of the city is going to get destroyed. But Spider-Man does end up beating Goblin, and he does end up winning the day, and does end up getting in a relationship with Gwen Stacy now. So this movie would have been pretty good in real life. It's just would have been way too dark for people's taste. Alongside this, the fact that Spider-Man ended up killing Green Goblin would end up ruffling up some jimmies. Now, although you might say Spider-Man doesn't kill people, keep in mind, neither does Superman, and look what Zack Snyder did. I'm not being rude to Snyder here, but I'm just saying, look what he did. He had Superman kill people. That's not what Superman does. So I'm gonna have to apply the same rule here with Spider-Man as well. Then following that up, we would have Spider-Man versus Wolverine. Now, back before the MCU started in real life, Wolverine was arguably the second most popular character in the entirety of Marvel, right behind Spider-Man. So because of this, we're going to go ahead and say the two of them would have crossed over in this film and have a versus battle similar to Batman v Superman. Now, something I do want to point out here is that his version of wanting to kill Spider-Man is actually going to be a bit better, considering the fact that he will be working with the X-Men, specifically some members like Cyclops, Jean Grey, Angel, and Iceman. However, they do end up dying, and Wolverine does end up seeing Spider-Man swing away, and he does get mad. However, something I would like to point out is that Professor Charles Xavier isn't going to die, and not every X-Men member is going to be here. This way, we could set up a potential X-Men spin-off of people like Colossus, Nightcrawler, Kitty Pryde, Rogue, Storm, so we have other X-Men for a potential spin-off. But pretty much what's going to happen here is that we would end up, the main villain here is actually going to be Dr. Octopus. However, he won't be Dr. Octopus. Instead, he's going to be Otto Octavius in this version, considering the fact that Lex Luthor wasn't the main villain. He didn't really fight Batman and Superman, so because this Otto Octavius will be the main villain, but he's not really going to fight with his arms, similar to how Lex Luthor did him with his armor. However, he will create an abomination to where Spider-Man and Wolverine have to fight, that being the actual abomination. And alongside this, Thor would also end up making up in this movie, considering in fact, in my opinion, Thor would fit this role a lot more for the Wonder Woman counterparts. So because of this, Thor, Wolverine, and Spider-Man would all team up to take on the Abomination. This is the first time the Trinity are together. However, Spider-Man would ultimately end up dying in this fight, and this would ultimately end up inspiring Wolverine to go ahead and create the Avengers to avenge Spider-Man and to protect the world of any threats, since he now realized that Spider-Man was a hero and that he shouldn't have gone after him for no reason. Then following that up, we have the Suicide Squad counterpart, which I decided to go ahead and make the Thunderbolts. While I could have made this the Guardians of the Galaxy, keep this in mind, there also have to be spin-offs of the Suicide Squad, such as Birds of Prey / the Harley Quinn movie, along with Peacemaker, which I don't really think there's any good ones for the Guardians of the Galaxy, in my opinion. It's unfortunate, because I do like the Guardians of the Galaxy. But keep in mind this, before the MCU was created and before they even showed up in the MCU, no one really knew who they were. So because of this, the Guardians of the Galaxy will not be showing up in the cinematic universe, unfortunately, which some might say is a crying shame, but that's how it's going to be. So instead, we're going with the Thunderbolts, this being run by General Thunderbolt Ross, who will kind of be the Amanda Waller equivalent, but not the entire time, because with him building together the Thunderbolts, and yeah, the Amanda Waller equivalent, but her kind of being the Nick Fury, no, it's not going to work. Instead, that would be the actual Nick Fury and S.H.I.E.L.D. And pretty much members that we can go ahead and have on this team, we can go ahead and have Crossbones, Black Widow, and Hawkeye would be a part of this team in this version of the MCU, instead of being a part of the Avengers, since as you can tell already, the Avengers lineup is quite different than the actual real-life Avengers. Alongside this, we can go ahead and have a couple other characters. Maybe we can have people like Baron Zemo be a part of the team. We can have Justin Hammer show up as well, so they'll be kind of part of the team as well. Now, the main villain here can actually be Marvel's version of the Enchantress, how she comes down from Asgard to go looking for Thor, since he was in Spider-Man vs. Wolverine, and instead meets the Thunderbolts. I mean, it probably wouldn't be a good movie, since Suicide Squad wasn't a good movie, but hey, maybe the sequel will be good. So the Thunderbolts, which will come later, might be a bit better. So then after that, we have the Wonder Woman counterpart, which is obviously going to be Thor. Now, this could be like the actual real-life Thor that we got in real life, just releasing a few years later, and maybe a bit better, because the one that we got into that's Love It's Okay, in my opinion, just changed things up a bit. And also, Jane Foster in this version would also die, similar to how Steve Trevor did in the actual real-life Wonder Woman. So because she would end up dying, and she would come back to do some magical means in the sequel. And as of right now, the Thor movie is actually the most successful movie in this version of the MCU, since the wall crawlers as the first Spider-Man movie was alright. However, then following that, Spider-Man vs. Wolverine and Suicide Squad wasn't really good financially and critically, so Thor will be the most successful film financially and critically so far in this version of the MCU, and Thor would get his own franchise, which is why I made him Wonder Woman, considering the fact that Thor needs to have his own franchise, so he'll get a sequel, which will be the counterpart to Wonder Woman 1984, and pretty soon, Thor 3, so because of this is why Thor is the counterpart to Wonder Woman. Finally, we're at the Avengers film, which, as you know, the lineup's very different. Like I said during the Suicide Squad, Black Widow and Hawkeye will not be part of the team, and as you know, Spider-Man and Wolverine, who are not an original six, are part of the team, though one of the original six is, that being Thor. Or pretty much the members of this team will also be very different as well, as we will also be adding some other members such as Doctor Strange, we will be adding Namor, and finally we will be adding the Incredible Hulk. So let me explain to you all these roles that they're going to play. So Hulk will be the cyborg equivalent, unfortunately, I'm sorry, because unfortunately Hulk is going to have to be the cyborg equivalent, and although I didn't really want him to, and I tried to figure out another role for Hulk to play while also still being in this movie, I couldn't figure out anything, so Hulk is unfortunately going to be the cyborg equivalent. Now, as well as this, Doctor Strange will be the Flash equivalent, which I will get to the Flash movie eventually. Alongside this, Namor is obviously the Aquaman equivalent, considering the fact both of them have Atlantis, and we're going to be seeing that as well when we get to the Namor movie. Alongside this, the main villain of this movie is not going to be Loki, it's actually going to be the entirety of the Black Order, kind of like how Steppenwolf is connected to Darkseid. The Black Order are really connected to Thanos, so there will be now, for those of you who don't know, this is going to be a lot more reminiscent of the comics rather than the real life MCU, because the Black Order in the comics were able to take down a bunch of the Avengers, just two of them, so they will be the main villains here. Alongside this, Nick Fury is putting the team together because, like I said, General Ross will not be the equivalent of Amanda Waller throughout the entirety of this version of the MCU, because legit, DC for some reason trying to make Amanda Waller their Nick Fury, which she's technically not, and especially wouldn't work for General Thunderbolt Ross, because all he really needs to do is for the Hulk films and Thunderbolts. So because of this, Nick Fury will be putting the team together. Granted, he's going to have very few small cameos after this movie. So because of this, he would end up putting the team together of Wolverine, Thor, Namor, Doctor Strange, and the Incredible Hulk, and they would all agree to bring Spider-Man back to life to help them, and thus Spider-Man would ultimately end up coming back to life to help them, and they would ultimately defeat the Black Order. Thus, the Black Order not defeated, and the Avengers go their separate ways, while also foreshadowing future movies that may not happen, or at least this original version of the team is currently with DC. Ben Affleck seems like he's not, after The Flash and all his other appearances right now, he's not going to return as Batman due to the fact he's dealing with his own film company. But we do know Henry Cavill is back as Superman, so because of this version of the original Avengers, only a few members are probably going to stay, while other people like Wolverine is going to have to get recasted or bring back a previous actor, which I will get to in a minute. Then following that, we go ahead and have our Namor movie, similar to how Aquaman, and this film will also make $1 billion, and it'll be very similar to Aquaman, being a very colorful movie, and it'll be set underwater, and it'll deal with the aftermath after the Avengers film and how Atlantis is still mysterious to people, even though people know superheroes do exist. And pretty much Namor will be going on through a journey through Atlantis. Now, I'm not really sure who the villain could be, since I'm not really that familiar with Namor's villains, but Namor's cousin can also be in here as well, which unfortunately she would be played by Amber Heard. So yes, I am carrying some problems with the real life DCEU and throwing it onto Marvel in this version. I am sorry, but we are going to have to do this. Alongside this, we would also end up having as well this make $1 billion. Alongside this, we will have a post-credit scene foreshadowing the next movie, and this would pretty much make $1 billion and be a huge success, just like the real-life Aquaman movie. And this would be, Namor will become a household name and become one of this version of Marvel's household names, and will become a huge moneymaker for them. Then after that, following the Namor movie, which is the Aquaman equivalent, the Shazam equivalent will actually be Captain Marvel. And something I want to address here, does take place in present day. This does not take place in the past. The Avengers team doesn't come from her. She's just a hero that is one of the more powerful ones. Alongside this, the movie might as well not be as serious as the actual real life Captain Marvel, considered by this is the Shazam equivalent, so it'll be a lot more goofy, a lot more fun. Captain Marvel will become a profitable character. This movie will get critically acclaimed across the board, and pretty much a lot of people would like it. Alongside this would actually end up setting the sequel, Captain Marvel to the Marvels, with us having Miss Marvel and Photon. So this will work a lot better with Miss Marvel and Photon showing up at the end of this movie. So Captain Marvel actually works a lot better as the equivalent to Shazam. So Captain Marvel will be the equivalent, and she, alongside this, Spider-Man would make it a cameo appearance as well, since he is the Superman equivalent, like I said. Though this wouldn't be the whole below the head thing, since Spider-Man has a mask, we would see the Spider-Man suit. He just wouldn't take off his mask to see Brandon Fraser, considering the fact that he wouldn't be available at this point. But we are actually able to see the entirety of Spidey's suit, considering the fact that the mask. So because this, Spider-Man would also make a cameo appearance here as well. Then following that, finding counterparts of the Joker was kind of difficult. Now, I do know that the Joker movies are not connected to any cinematic universe, but I feel like the Joker should get an equivalent. So finding an equivalent was a lot harder because of the fact what the Joker deals with. Originally, I was going to go with Magneto being the counterpart to Joker, however, I decided against it, and instead we are actually going to be having a Cletus Cassidy movie. So yes, Cletus Cassidy will be the counterpart to the Joker, going over real situations. Now, will Cletus Cassidy become Carnage? I am not sure. He might become Carnage, but not to the point where Venom and Spider-Man shows up. But pretty much, this will be a Cletus Cassidy movie. Now, I know this might work better if it was a Wolverine villain, considering the fact Wolverine's the counterpart to Batman, and the Joker is a Batman villain. However, I feel like there's not really any good Wolverine and villain movies that could work. I mean, we can do a Weapon X movie potentially, but going over the real life stuff situations, I don't think would work. So because of this, instead we're going to go ahead and have this be a Cletus Cassidy movie and go over real life situations of modern day society and what this would go through with Cletus Cassidy. Then following that, we have the weirdest movie in the cinematic universe, the real life DCEU, the Birds of Prey equivalent, which would have to be the Harley Quinn movie, which is going to be a Black Widow movie, since, like I said, that's kind of the entire reason I put Black Widow in Thunderbolts, as after her experience with the Thunderbolts, she actually ends up leading it, and she's going to be leading a team of heroes. Now, this team of heroes will consist of characters that probably won't get their own franchises, but maybe they would, you never know, since apparently they had a Black Canary movie in development, but they ended up getting canceled. So because of this, this is going to be a Force movie with Black Widow. Now, the characters that will be a part of this team, the characters I'll put on here will probably be characters such as Elektra, Jessica Jones, and She-Hulk. So that will be the member of A-Force, and they will be teaming up with Black Widow. And pretty much this would set up Jessica Jones to potentially get a movie, though it would get canceled when Discovery would end up buying them. So this is kind of a reverse of what was happening with DC and Marvel. Then after that, we go ahead and have our Thor sequel, which is kind of going to be Thor Love and Thunder. So this will be kind of a combination of Thor Love and Thunder and Thor the Dark World, to where Gore and the Dark Elves would be the main villain, kind of like how Wonder Woman 1984 had two villains, and Jane Foster would come back to life through the magical means of Mjolnir, while Thor would get Stormbreaker in this film alongside this. In the final battle, Jane Foster would die, so she would actually be in the movie a lot longer. So we're kind of just cramming two movies together, kind of like mushing the two life movies together. Alongside this, Loki would also be in here in a greater role as well, since, like I said, he was in the main villain in the Avengers film, so he would have actually survived. So Loki would have came back here as well, and pretty much this movie would kind of be a combination of Thor the Dark World and Thor Love and Thunder, which, considering the fact that both these movies alone aren't good, combining them would have probably made a much worse movie. But hey, Wonder Woman 1984 sucks and is arguably the worst movie in the DCEU. So we're going to have to live with it. The fans demanded for it for years, and thus we ended up getting the Joss Whedon Avengers. So to create a story for y'all, if you don't really know, pretty much I ended up deciding to do an inverse of what Zack Snyder and Joss Whedon did in real life, so it's a reverse. So pretty much here in the real life Avengers, as you know, Joss Whedon directed it, and he ended up messing up Justice League. So in this version, as if you've seen my version of the DCU, Zack Snyder would direct the first two Justice League films, and he would come on to direct the Avengers, which ended up not turning out good, and that's why it sucked. So the fans wanted to see the Joss Whedon Avengers cut, and we do end up seeing it, and it's a lot better. We get a lot more time with Hulk and Bruce Banner, seeing the stress of him being in the Hulk. We actually end up seeing the backstory of Spider-Man and how Gwen and Aunt May miss him. Alongside this, we get to see a lot more of Wolverine putting the team together. Alongside this, we actually end up getting a cameo from Vision at the end of it, as he is going to be the Martian Manhunter counterpart. So Vision will also end up making a cameo here. Alongside this, the character that was cut, as you know, Jon Stewart's Green Lantern, was going to show up in Zack Snyder's Justice League. That character would have shown up with Vision, would have been Iron Man, so Iron Man would have still created Vision here. It's just he was cut from the film. But Iron Man could show back up for a sequel, and it could be the Green Lantern counterpart. And alongside this, during the final battle with the Black Order, Spider-Man would actually get the black suit, so he would get the symbiote suits. Like I said, in the first Spider-Man movie, it was Green Goblin as the main villain, and in Spider-Man vs. Wolverine, it was Otto Octavius who made the Abomination. So because of this, he would get the black suit, which could set up Venom for a future possibility, but as of right now, we don't know. Though we do know we will be getting a Man of Steel sequel, so when I just go through the highlight reel of stuff we know we're getting, but we don't know the release date of, we will go ahead and get to that. Then following that, we have the counterpart to the Suicide Squad, which would be the Thunderbolts. So pretty much a couple characters that would be returning. We can have Zemo come back, but he would probably die at the beginning. General Ross in this version would actually become Red Hulk in this movie, and Hulk is actually going to show up here in this movie, as I do want to increase Hulk's screen time a bit, since Hulk is, in my opinion, deserves to be in a lot more movies, considering the fact that She-Hulk and Red Hulk had a lot more screen time in other movies. So Hulk would actually show up here in this movie, and this is how General Thunderbolt Ross will become Red Hulk. So Hulk will actually decide to help the Thunderbolts, and the new members of his team, since majority of them would die except for Black Widow, so Hulk and Red Hulk would end up joining them with Black Widow. Would be characters such as Taskmaster. We could have a U.S. agent. Alongside this, we could actually go ahead and have potentially Ghost from Ant-Man. Alongside this, we would actually end up having Deadpool here as well, alongside the Punisher. So Deadpool is essentially kind of going to be the Peacemaker counterpart here, to where he's going to get his own show. And we can also have Punisher show up there as well, though he would have made his first appearance here alongside Deadpool. And the main villain here is that General Ross could put together another team, and that as an alien invasion is coming and the Avengers are currently unavailable, and that's why he also decided to call the Hulk down here to come help them, though there is some beef between the two of them, obviously, but General Ross would become Red Hulk as well. Now, for the villains they could choose here, perhaps it could be the Chitauri. I'm not really sure. It could be one of them, maybe a symbiote invasion or something. So y'all can go ahead and choose the villain in the comment section down below. But all that really matters is here is that Hulk got more screen time in this, and that Deadpool is going to get his own spin-off show, and Punisher will show up there. So then following that, like I said, we would have the Deadpool show, which will be the Peacemaker counterpart. Alongside this, Punisher would also end up showing up in the show as well, and the two of them would become friends. Alongside this, we could also have some new X-Men show up here, such as Colossus, as Colossus was kind of in Deadpool's inner circle in the Deadpool movie, so we could kind of do that here. So Colossus will kind of be in Deadpool's inner circle. Alongside this, Professor X will also end up showing up here as well for the first time, as he would only get a mention in Spider-Man vs. Wolverine, but here Professor X would actually end up showing up here in person, and how he's trying to rebuild the X-Men, considering the fact that Wolverine's joined the Avengers, but he's still trying to get in contact with Logan to also rejoin the X-Men so he could be part of both teams. Alongside this, the Avengers would make their first and so far only cameo after their movie. Now, the members that would show up here would be Namor, Doctor Strange, Thor, and Spider-Man. Wolverine is not going to be showing up here, but I would also add the Hulk here as well, because again, Hulk deserves more screen time, and there's a lot more room for Hulk to work in rather than Cyborg, such as the Thunderbolts and this film, so he would actually end up showing here. But we could also just have the entirety of the original 6 show up, but considering the fact that Deadpool, Colossus, Professor X, and Punisher would be showing up here in the final battle, and Professor X wants to talk to Wolverine, that's not really going to work for what we want to do. Then after that, we have the Batman's counterpart, where this is going to have to be a Wolverine movie, and pretty much in this movie, we're going to go ahead and have a younger version of Wolverine than what we do have now, how he's been Wolverine for a while, and he just got through the Weapon X stuff, and the main villain here can go ahead and be Weapon X entirely, and in this film as well, this would start essentially a Wolverine type of cinematic universe, kind of like how the Batman's going to do with Batman shows and spin-offs. So we could get spin-offs here as well for some other characters, such as X-23, for example, since she's probably not going to be showing up in the main MCU, this version of the MCU or the MEU, Marvel Extended Universe. So because of this would pretty much be a bit darker as well, kind of like how the Batman is. And pretty much this would be critically acclaimed, and fans would love it, and some fans would actually want him to show up in the main DCEU for that Wolverine, since considering the fact that the main Wolverine in the EU, which is actually going to be played by Tom Hardy, is kind of ready to get out, and he only has a few more appearances left, and they're not really sure where to go from there, as in the real life current DCU, since Ben Affleck's probably after his final few appearances is going to be out as Batman for good. He's going to need a replacement, and we don't know if they're going to bring in Robert Pattinson or Michael Keaton, if they're just going to recast him, but we're going to get to that when we get to that. Then following that, we have the Black Adam equivalent, which finding a counterpart to this is actually quite easy, considering the fact that there's a lot more Marvel villains that deserve their own films, such as Magneto, Doctor Doom, and maybe Venom. But again, after Venom's origin story with Spider-Man and stuff, that's what they should have done with the real life Venom movie. But pretty much the movie we'll be about here is actually going to be Doctor Doom. Now, so Doctor Doom will indeed be getting his own movie. Alongside this, we actually have an opportunity for the JSA, for example, as in this movie. Rather, we're going to actually have the X-Men show up here for the JSA. Now, while it could be the Fantastic Four, I feel like the X-Men work a lot better as the JSA's equivalent. So because of this, and like I said in the Deadpool show, Professor X is currently in the middle of the process of rebuilding the X-Men together, and how they've acted. And also something I want to mention is that in Spider-Man vs. Wolverine, we actually do know that the X-Men have been there for a while now, before the Avengers, since the 2000s. However, they ended up obviously getting broken up after the events of Spider-Man vs. Wolverine, and that as well as the first Spider-Man movie, everything going on there, and Professor X has now brought together another version of the team. So Colossus from Deadpool will be here as well, alongside Professor X, alongside these two new members as well, being Nightcrawler and Kitty Pryde. So this is pretty much going to be our JSA equivalent. Now, I also would like to add a fifth member there in Rogue, because for those of you who don't know, Hawkgirl was also going to be in Black Adam originally. So these five would end up taking on Doctor Doom. Now, something I want to point out here is that in this version, no member's going to die, because although it does kind of suck that although it is kind of shocking that Dr. Fate died, it's also kind of lame when you realize that if they want to use Dr. Fate Future, it's either you're going to have to use a prequel or introduce a new version of Dr. Fate, which, while it's possible, certain X-Men characters don't really have replacements for them. So because of this, we're going to have to go with this. Alongside this, Spider-Man would finally show up for Brandon Fraser reprising the role, as essentially showing that he's essentially back in the role, and he will be getting a new movie, similar to how Henry Cavill's Superman is now back here as well. So pretty much that'll be going on. Then after that, we'll go ahead and have the Shazam Fury of the Gods counterpart, with its counterpart, of course, going to be the Marvels, which, as I said earlier, which is going to have Photon, potentially Blue Marvel, Nova, Miss Marvel, alongside Captain Marvel, and they would all end up teaming up to take on the Skrulls. So the Skrulls will go ahead and be the main villain here, and this will kind of be an adaptation of the Secret Wars. Now, something I do want to mention is that the main villains of Captain Marvel will still be the main villains of that film. However, the Skrulls would actually end up portraying Carol Danvers, as they think that they do no longer need her, so they would try to kill her, and she would actually end up bringing all these characters together, such as Blue Marvel, Miss Marvel, Nova, and Photon. Now, some of these characters could get their own franchises, such as Nova and Miss Marvel, while some of them wouldn't, and would have to be stayed in the Marvels. But pretty much, they would all end up working together, and they would end up taking on the Skrulls. And Captain Marvel is still the Shazam equivalent, with the Marvels being the Shazam Fury of the Gods equivalent. Even though technically the Black Adam movie should have been a Captain Marvel villain, but there's not really any good ones I could think of. So because of this, that's why I chose Doctor Doom for that one, and Captain Marvel, so the equivalent of Shazam. Then following that, we go ahead and have The Flash, which it will be releasing sometime next summer. And this is kind of why I made Doctor Strange the Flash equivalent, as we could call it some Doctor Strange or Doctor Strange to the Multiverse of Madness. And this movie, as The Flash's first movie, is actually going to be huge. Originally, it was going to be this huge multiverse thing to where pretty much certain characters will be replaced, how Superman was going to be replaced by Supergirl, and Batman was originally going to be replaced by Michael Keaton's Batman, which would have led into Batgirl. But as you know, with Discovery buying WB, that kind of squandered their plans, though we can still have Wolverine being replaced by Hugh Jackman. Now, the reason I'm doing this is because, considering the fact we have no idea what's going to go on, whether Wolverine's going to currently get recast or not, whether they're going to keep Michael Keaton as Batman or not, recast him, or just bring in Robert Pattinson, we don't know. But I'm just going to go with this, that they're going to keep Michael Keaton as Batman for now, and they might introduce Nightwing or Tim Drake as his successor to Batman. We don't really know at the moment, but for right now, we're going to bring back Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, and he could actually remain in the role a lot longer than Michael Keaton does, considering the fact that Hugh Jackman is a lot younger than Michael Keaton, so he can actually stay as Wolverine for a while in the new version of the MCU, kind of like how the new version of the DCEU, it's going to essentially be a lot more well-structured from what we've heard from James Gunn and Peter Safran. So we're going to go ahead and keep this as well. Alongside this, Spider-Man would also have a great role here as well. And Tom Hardy's Wolverine would also have a pretty good role here as well. Wrap up this would be his final movie. Kind of like how this is rumored to become, this is probably going to be Ben Affleck's final appearance, aside from maybe the Aquaman movie, which I'll get to the Namor equivalent in a minute. But pretty much, yeah, this would be like that. And this is why Doctor Strange is the counterpart to the Flash. And then following that, we'll go ahead and have the Blue Beetle movie, which the Blue Beetle movie's equivalent will go ahead and be Ant-Man. So this is going to be very similar to some stuff we know about the Blue Beetle movie, while also the real life Ant-Man. So pretty much a rich Hank Pym will pretty much be retired and pass the role to Scott Lang, who just got out of prison, and pretty much here and this could also be very similar as well, with him learning how to use the powers of Ant-Man. And Yellow Jacket could still go ahead and be the main villain here, with Janet Van Dyne still being trapped in the quantum realm. Alongside this, setting up Hope to become Wasp in the sequel. Alongside this, we could still have Scott have those family struggles as well, and still love his daughter. And that's pretty much would be the Ant-Man movie, although he would have a cameo as well here, as we would actually end up seeing Spider-Man make a cameo here as well, with him approaching Ant-Man of an offer about joining the Avengers. As from what we've seen, apparently Jason Momoa tweeted out how his green film will be coming true soon. Now, I'm not sure if that's going to be another Justice League movie, or if it's a Crisis film with like Justice League Crisis on Infinite Earths or something, but Spider-Man would go ahead and approach Ant-Man with an offer to join the Avengers alongside Hulk, because like I said, Hulk's going to get a lot more screen time than Cyborg did, as we can fit Hulk in a lot more roles than Cyborg. Plus, Hulk does, in my opinion, deserve a lot more screen time, and there are places where you could fit him here a lot better. Then following that, we have the Aquaman The Lost Kingdom counterpart, which would be a Namor sequel. And this movie could go ahead, it could be whatever similar to what Aquaman The Lost Kingdom can be about. Alongside this would actually introduce us to Wakanda in this movie, and would actually end up introducing us to Black Panther. So Black Panther is kind of going to be an antagonist in this movie, but overall at the end, he is going to be a hero and team up with Namor to fight this true secret villain of this movie. Alongside this, Namor would also end up extending an invitation to Black Panther to join the Avengers alongside Hugh Jackman's Wolverine, who would also show up in this movie as well. And pretty much Black Panther would also join the Avengers here as well. As, like I said, we're not sure what Jason Momoa's dream film is going to be, but pretty much this would pretty much allow Black Panther to go ahead and join the Avengers as well. Then after this, we're just going to go ahead and go through movies that we know are currently in development, but we don't really know much about at the moment. So because of this, Joker 2 is obviously going to be a Cletus Cassidy sequel alongside this, stuff such as the Batman spinoff. So obviously for the Batman 2 and the Batman 3, that is obviously going to be the Wolverine 2 and the Wolverine 3. Potentially another Suicide Squad movie, which would obviously be the Thunderbolts. Man of Steel 2, which would obviously be a Spider-Man / Wallcrawler sequel. Alongside this, we also end up having the Constantine sequel, which would go ahead and just be Blade 2, just have Blade be the counterpart to Constantine in the early 2000s. So Blade will go ahead and be the counterpart to Constantine. For this, alongside this, for the Wolverine spin-offs here as well, I guess we can go ahead and get to such as Weapon X as well as Sabretooth as well, as in my opinion, they could potentially work as villains here. Alongside this, go ahead and have the Green Lantern show, which I'm not sure if the Green Lantern show is canceled or not, because I've heard some reports of it. So we can just go ahead and have the Green Lantern show be the counterpart. We can go ahead and have this be an Iron Man show, considering the fact from what I've last heard of it, the Green Lantern show is now being restructured into a Jon Stewart Green Lantern show. So this could be an Iron Man show from what we saw from what was originally going to see in Joss Whedon's Justice League, which was the counterpart to Snyder's Justice League. And pretty much there we can actually end up seeing Iron Man. We can see Vision show up here alongside War Machine and maybe Ironheart and Pepper Potts showing up in our show. And pretty much she would also get the invitation to join the Avengers, which she would accept. Alongside this, for the Dream Project Jason Momoa was talking about, now we're not sure if it's going to be a Crisis on Infinite Earths film or another Justice League, but I'm going to say it's going to be a Justice League movie which will focus on Crisis on Infinite Earths, so Avengers Secret Wars, and that's why the Avengers are bringing together more members such as this, the currently new formed X-Men, as we could also get an X-Men movie as the counterpart to a potential Justice Society of America movie, alongside this, Deadpool Season 2 as well, which could introduce us to a few more members, as we could also end up bringing in some members such as all kinds of members, and comment down below what members you would like to bring in this version of the X-Men, as we do still have a good amount of members we could join here. So the X-Men would also end up helping the Avengers and the Avengers Secret Wars film. Alongside this, in this movie, we could finally introduce Captain America to the Avengers, alongside this with also Thor 3 as well. So Thor would also end up showing up here as well. So because as the original six would show back up alongside Iron Man, War Machine, Vision, Ironheart, Pepper Potts, Captain Marvel, and all the Marvels. Alongside this, we have Ant-Man, alongside maybe Hope becoming Wasp here. Black Panther would also be showing up here as well, and the Thunderbolts, and pretty much all of them would end up teaming up and try to take down King the Conqueror. And this would lead to a massive reset in the universe where they could start over and get a much better, well-structured universe, very similar to my version of the DCEU, which was a lot better structured. And that would pretty much be the MCU, the Marvel Extended Universe, which, yeah, as of right now, it's a bit messy. But to be fair, the current DCU is messy at the moment. Though, to be fair, it's going to be a lot more structured, considering the fact that James Gunn is now here on board. So because of this would pretty much be the Marvel equivalent of the DCEU if it wasn't how well structured at all, actually getting to a structured universe. But I hope you all enjoy this video. Make sure you guys go ahead, like the video, subscribe to the channel, comment down below what you thought of this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.